Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today we're going to do a bit of a different video where we talk about the absolute worst legendary cards of all time. It's kind of one of these lists where we go over these cards and think about what were they thinking when they come up with these? Some of these are even neutral cards. Neutral cards, for neutral legendaries to not see any play, they really have to suck because there's so many different options along the whole spectrum of all the classes about things that could go into them, and nope, not quite. These are cards that when you open your pack and you see that legendary, when you're hovering, you're in awe. Yes, I'm finally going to get the one that I want. And then it probably ends up on this list of top 10 worst legendaries, and it is exactly not the one that you want. This process has become a little bit better over the years, as you can't actually open a legendary card you already have, but a decent number of these are before this happened. You'll see that number one, some of you guys might remember from watching, those glorious first day of the expansion launch streams, all day streams. We're still doing those, by the way. Make sure to check those out, by the way. On some of those, I just opened the same terrible card, terrible legendary, again and again and again, and it just drives me crazy. Now, that can't happen exactly anymore, but there's certainly a lot of blunders out there. So we're going to do a top 10. 10th place is Dusk Fallen Avianna. Oh my god, this card is so bad. I mean, even in the card review stage, I can't imagine any player who's actually played this game would think this card is any good. It's an effect that's insanely powerful, but you first give it to your opponent. So, you just hand your opponent the victory. It's like, this card is basically, at the start of each player's turn, they win the game. But you play it, and you can't play it at the start of your turn. So you play it, and then you lose. There you go. That's the combo. Wow, it's incredible, right? There are some very elaborate combos to try to get this effect to trigger on your turn, but who are we kidding? This card is so terrible. It's just had no hope of ever seeing any kind of play in just about any circumstance. I can't believe that this is a class card. Sometimes with class cards, they're really bad, but they push for some kind of synergy. Nothing. This card is just horrible. Just might as well not exist. Number 9 is a bit of a different story. It's Flame Leviathan. I actually tried playing this card quite a bit in my hipster control mage decks, because at the time a lot of players were playing very aggressive decks, and if you would draw Flame Leviathan against a board in the early game, you could actually win quite decisively as a result of it. And that was pretty cool, and certainly I loved doing that, but that was in a time where Hearthstone existed before accurate statistics on the different cards, before, websites that would have all the top win rate decks in the game at any time that you could just copy the code over from. It was a time in Hearthstone when people actually kind of played their own stuff. And even though I wouldn't say success playing this card, my win rate playing this card in that deck was probably about 40% or so. That would be just one of the worst decks ever if you really put it into today's deck hierarchy. Now, the main issue with Flame Leviathan is that a lot of the time playing control mages, you would rely on Ice Block to save you from death. And what would happen a lot of the time is Flame Leviathan would kill you on your own turn, either with Ice Block up or Ice Block freshly popped. And that happens so often that I ended up making YouTube videos from, this experience, to a point that, we didn't exactly play the deck anymore. I love Flame Leviathan, but not quite. There's a lot of really bad cards out there. Some of them have very unique effects, and I kind of appreciate that Blizzard tried to make those work, but who are we kidding? Flame Leviathan is absolutely hopeless, and it makes the list. Number 8, Anomalous. Wow, look at this card. Wow, you can clear the board, kind of, by playing a minion, and then it would clear on the following turn. You're playing mage, right? How is this a card, let alone a legendary card? Like, it's 8 mana, clear the board at some point later in the future, probably. Well, maybe not, because you might get hexed, or polymorphed, or silenced, which are all very common when this card came into the game, right? I mean, I tried this card. There are some fringe cases where it's actually okay, but, you know, we're talking about very fringe, very fortunate circumstances, typically through evolution mechanics, typically playing aggressive decks where you just need like 6 damage and your opponent can't kill you, but he has to kill the minion so he doesn't die and clears his own board on his turn and kind of wastes most of his turn, but then ends up playing some stuff anyway. So it's still not really that good. It's still, you'd rather just have like a Flame Strike, right? Like, Flame Strike is a base card. This card is not good. So yes, anomalous, not good, makes number 8 on the list. Murabi. Now, I talked about how I didn't want to include cards on this list that, you know, were just really cool cards. Even though they might have sucked, they were really cool. Murabi, well, he certainly has the chill factor. It was like the pinnacle of the awfulness of the Freeze Shaman. Freeze Shaman was so bad, I don't understand why Blizzard thought it would be any good. I remember that deck recipes were a thing when Freeze Shaman and Murabi kind of, you know, came into the game. And we expected that this would be decent, because, you know, Blizzard made a deck recipe out of it. It was encouraging new players to play Shaman under the Freeze Shaman archetype. I actually played that very deck, and I tried to win a game on ladder. After hours, I was unable to do so. The deck is actually that bad. This archetype is horrible. And a 6-mana 4/4 with value-based synergy in a deck that does like nothing is so terrible. It boggles the mind on how anyone would ever have thought this would be good in any way. You know, Shaman, the main problem as a class is it struggles to constantly stay on the board. There's already tons of value plays that you can make, and they don't involve terrible synergies that have to do with freezing mechanics. Oh my god. You open Murabi in packs, you're gonna be depressed. Number 6, Dr. Morrigan. So this card is, you know, fairly recent. It's still playable right now. It's just a card where it just costs way too much mana to have any kind of significance. It's, you know, 8 mana 5/5 in a world where, you know, we were playing like Void Lords with cubes and stuff, where people could only win against Warlock if they played hard removal, silences, or one-turn kill combos. How does an 8 mana 5/5 compete among any of that ever, right? So this card safely makes the list. I don't understand how this card could have ever been any good. And the next one up is another Warlock card, Tyriq the Bat. Now, the verdict might still be out on this card, but as of the making of this video, which is in the Rastakhan's Rumble expansion, we just had this card as part of this expansion, it has like no synergies. It's an 8 mana, fill the board with 1/1s. Wow, it's amazing, right? So we have the Spirit that obviously synergizes with it, kind of. You know, to play the Spirit, you have to sacrifice multiple minions, but if you have a deck with multiple minions, you probably have multiple minions in your hand, and the effect only targets one of them. So actually, it's not even really that synergistic with the only card it actually consistently synergizes with. Where's the rest of the deck, Blizzard? For now, Tyriq is basically the ultimate troll evolution step. When you evolve that 7-cost minion right into a Tyriq the Bat, you remind yourself just how god-awful this card is. Number 4, Harbinger Celestia. Again, I don't really understand how Blizzard thought this was a good card. So if you consider this card with like Mirror Entity, yes, it's slightly better if your opponent plays and does absolutely nothing on their turn. That is accurate. Now, here's something that I've noticed that happens in Hearthstone. Anything. Things happen. on basically every turn in every game. So that's just not going to happen, so the card is super bad. When your opponent is actually playing cards, it's a 4-cost mirror entity without any kind of secret-based synergy, because, mirror entity can be cheated out by, Kirin Mage. You make your secret cost 0, you play a 0-mana mirror entity. This is a 4-mana mirror entity without the option of secret tempo synergy, and also your opponent can see the card on the board. It's there. They're not going to make a mistake and play a big minion into it. They're just not going to do that. So this card is actually completely hopeless. I don't understand why they would ever make this card. Number 3. This is when we're going troll pack material. Hemet. Oh boy. When this card was a thing, there was basically no one playing beasts of any kind ever. At the very late stages, in a very fringe scenario, I remember there was a single deck. At one point, Druid was so dominant with the old Savage Roar Force of Nature combo that Hemet actually made some deck lists in specific ranks where this deck was so popular just to get a tempo play on their Druid of the Claw. That's it. That's the best it's ever got. That's Hemet, boys. It's a horribly statted card in an age of Hearthstone where stats mattered a lot, in particular health, which this card had basically none of. So, no good, man. No good. Number 2, this is where we get into the meme level, the iconic, terrible, terrible cards, terrible legendaries in Hearthstone. The Boogie Monster. Oh my god. I remember doing like a take 2 on this card. So, I would look at it and I'm like, wait, what? That can't be that bad. Oh, it can. It can be that bad. Again, this is a card at a stage in Hearthstone's history where stats mattered a lot. You needed to be able to play a well-statted minion, and you often needed to have enough mana to do something else that turn. 8 mana really limited that, and it's basically a Boulder Fist. The main issue with Boogie Monster is it's a large, but not even really that large minion that costs 2 more mana than it should. But even though it costs more mana than it should, the synergy of this card is killing things. But the problem with that is when you successfully play a large minion and your opponent doesn't remove it with a spell, what you actually want to do is hit your opponent in the face, which basically makes this card's effect completely pointless. So anyway, if you're playing a big minion and your opponent doesn't remove it, you try to end the game because they don't have an answer. You don't start trading to try to stall the game because you've basically already won it by playing your large minion. This card has literally no hope of ever being good unless Wind Fury just somehow at a later stage in the game completely took over Hearthstone. Wind Fury. And then maybe there's still a hell lot of other better cards. Number 1 on my list, it's kind of a bit of a personal thing. It is Bolf. Oh man. When this card was released, we had a huge day 1 all-day stream event, and I pulled Bolf after Bolf after Bolf. I had like 6 or 7 Bolfs, and I think even Rania opened like a golden Bolf. Oh my god, the depression was off the charts. How could you get so many copies? It felt like it was rigged. How can you get so many copies of such a blatantly hopeless, useless card? Bolf, guys. It costs so much mana, and all it really does in the end, at the very best case, it's like you just heal yourself, because that's it. If your opponent can do the face damage, then you don't actually have the minion aspect of the card. It's kind of like a horrible 6 mana healing touch that your opponent can silence or kill with a spell on its way to killing you. It's so hopeless. Why do these cards ever exist? Well, that's probably a question we'll never quite get the answer to, but let me know what you think. Let me know if you have some more additions to the list, and we'll see you guys in the next one.